The verbs take and get are very popular. Learn some useful expressions with take and get and how to ask questions correctly in English. In this week's episode of
Aprender Inglés con Reza y Craig.
Welcome to Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig. I'm Reza.
And my name's Craig. And yes, you can go to Google and YouTube and look for grammar and vocabulary and pronunciation. But how do you know if it's good advice? With over 45 years of teaching between us, Reza and I are going to improve your English and take all aspects of your English to the next level. How are you, Reza?
I'm feeling very well now, Craig. And you?
Yes, I'm also feeling great. It's good to be back on the podcast. We begin this week with a voice message from Victor Delgado, who wants to obtain or get a B2 level. How can he do it? Let's listen to Victor.
Good night. Today I talk to you very important to how can I obtain level B number 2 of the English. It's very important, right? I can check how can obtain or search this level for me. Thank you for helping me.
Thank you, Victor, for sending us your voice message. It's always lovely to hear from our listeners. Reza, any comments? The first thing I noticed, Reza, I don't know if you noticed, that I think he started his message with good night, which usually we say before we go to bed. So you're getting ready for bed, you're going to sleep, and you say good night. Maybe it would be better good evening in this situation, because good morning in the morning, good afternoon in the afternoon, and good evening if it's in the evening.
Yes, Victor. Good night's normally to say goodbye, whereas good evening's to say hello. So good evening at the beginning. Well, Victor, I understand that you're looking for information about how to obtain or get a B2 level English. And that's equivalent of, say, a Cambridge first certificate exam. And it sounds like you're on the way. However, Victor, I would have to say that you would need to focus quite a bit on fluency. We understand what you're trying to say, but there's a lot of hesitation and a lot of pauses and even some missing words in your sentences. Don't you think, Craig?
Yeah, maybe I would suggest before you look at B2, Victor, go to the website mencioningles.com and you'll find courses, los cursos at different levels. And there's also a level test, una prueba de nivel. Take the level test, and I have a feeling you'll probably be around maybe B1. So maybe the Inglés Básico, Curso Básico would be a good level for you, just to work on sentence structure, some basic grammar, and how you put a sentence together. So study that course for a few months, and then I think you'll be ready to think about B2. One thing I did like is the way in the middle, you said it's very important, right? Which is quite a colloquial, conversational way to use a tag question. You can say, it's very important, isn't it? But right, you could use at the end of a question with rising intonation, and you could use it with any sentence. So it's very important, right? It's a nice day, right? You're going to meet me tomorrow, right? So you can use that in informal English as a tag question. That was very good. Did you notice anything that he could improve from the message?
Yes. In general, as Craig said, sentence structure. Think, if possible, a little bit more about where your sentence is going before you start it. Because it sounds like you're thinking of each word as you come to it, rather than very quickly thinking about more or less what you're going to say in the sentence before you say it. So you're missing words like prepositions and conjunctions, words to join up, and you're mixing up verbs which go with infinitives rather than verbs which go with ing, that type of thing, because you need to just slow down a little bit and think about what you're going to say before you say it.
And right at the end, there was an example of this. You said, Victor, thank you for help me. After prepositions, it's always a gerund. So the correct way would be to say thank you for helping me. And we won't give any specific advice on the FCE exam, the B2 exam here, because we've spoken about it before. If you go to episodes 160 and 100, you'll find information and some help with the B2 exam. So inglespodcast.com/160 and inglespodcast.com/100.
Craig, I think we have some more feedback from Mexico, from Edgar.
Yes, Edgar says, "Hi Reza and Craig. This is Edgar Ubaldo from Mexico." Oh, we've heard from Edgar before. Hello, Edgar. And now 2-year-long loyal listener of your podcasts. Well, thank you very much. He continues, "Thank you so much for your dedication. It's very valuable for many of us. Your love for podcasting always helps us to correct and perfect our English skills." Smiley face. "I'm writing to you because I'm confused a little bit with the grammar and syntax of some expressions and questions. Like, for example, what happens? Shouldn't this be what does it happen? Due to the word order and it as the grammatical pronoun? What happened? Shouldn't this be what did it happen? Another example, what causes the rain pollution? What causes the air pollution? What causes the delay? What causes the rain? Shouldn't it be what does it cause the rain? What does it cause the air pollution? So in this case, I'm interested in knowing the reason responsible for the rain or the air pollution or the delay. Another example from Edgar, what causes happiness in life? Is this one correct? I'm interested in knowing the reason as well. Well, thank you for your question, Edgar. The last sentence is correct, Reza. What causes happiness in life? Perfectly correct.
Yes, but your other questions, I would say, are not correct. No, there's a right way and a wrong way of forming a question. And to know that, you need to know, Edgar, the function of the question words. By question words, we're talking about what, where, when, why, who, how much, what time, how many, that type of thing. Question words. What you need to know is that word or words the subject or not? The subject or not? Craig, can you give us a couple of examples maybe?
Well, if you look at the sentence, who did you meet in the supermarket yesterday? Whom did you meet in the supermarket yesterday? The who is the object and the you is the subject. Who did you meet in the supermarket yesterday?
So, because who is the object, that's in Spanish, complemento directo. We're not talking about objeto. We're talking about grammar here. Object is complemento directo. You use the question form. So that requires you to use auxiliary verb did. Who did you meet? Who did you meet? Not who met. Who did you meet is the question form. Which won't surprise you if you're a learner of English. You'll think, yeah, that's what I learned. You ask the question, you use the question form, right? Well, no, not always. Because listen to this question. Who shot Kennedy? It's a question, isn't it? Who shot Kennedy? But there is no auxiliary did here. It's the positive form. It's not the question form. Because the word who shot Kennedy, who is the subject in that question? Kennedy would be the object. So who is the subject? So we have no question form. We have the positive form. So who shot? No did. It's just the positive form, shot.
So if I'm speaking about Harvey Oswald, who shot Kennedy, the question would be, who did Harvey Oswald shoot?
Right, exactly.
And the answer, he shot Kennedy.
Right.
So because I'm asking about the object, I need did.
Exactly, that's it. Whenever the question word or words are the subject, it's the positive form, not the question form.
Another example could be perhaps, I saw John yesterday.
Yeah.
Who did you see?
Exactly. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. I tell you what, we'll read you a few more examples and we'll give you a bit of time and think about it. Think, have we used the question form or have we used the positive form? The positive form doesn't necessarily need you to add auxiliaries. It's just the positive form, like a positive sentence. Here's an example. What time do you usually meet? I'll repeat. What time do you usually meet? Is that the question form or is that the normal positive form? It's the question form, isn't it? I've added the auxiliary do for a present simple. What time do you usually meet? Because what time here is not the subject. The subject is you. So we use the question form.
Let's look at another example. Where can we buy some vegetables? Where can we buy some vegetables? That's the normal question form because we, I'm asking about we, that's the subject. Where can we buy some vegetables?
But compare it to this question. What vegetable costs the most in the shop? I'll repeat that. What vegetable costs the most in the shop? Is that the question form or is that the positive form? What vegetable costs the most in the shop? Well, the answer is it's the positive form. I didn't use auxiliary do. I just said costs, which is the normal positive third person singular form of the verb to cost. Costs. What vegetable costs? Because my question words, what vegetable, are the subject of the verb costs.
Because you're asking about the vegetable.
Right. So no need for auxiliary. We just use the positive form. What vegetable costs?
Now try this next one. How many eggs, huevos, how many eggs have you bought? How many eggs have you bought? What's the subject there? Well, the subject is you. I'm asking about you, how many eggs you bought. So that's the question form. How many eggs have you bought?
Compare it to this one. How many eggs are lying on the table? How many eggs are lying on the table? ¿Cuántos huevos hay en la mesa? How many eggs are lying on the table? Is that the question form or the positive form? Now think about that one. That's a bit trickier. How many eggs are lying on the table?
So you have to think about the subject, right? What's the subject?
So the answer is that is the positive form. Now wait, hold on a minute. This does have an auxiliary, are lying. Are is an auxiliary verb, but that's because the verb is present continuous. And for present continuous, you always have an auxiliary verb. Always. I said that in the question form, you may have to add an auxiliary, but maybe not. There may already be an auxiliary. For example, to make the present continuous, you have to use auxiliary to be. I am eating, she is running, we are talking. That's positive, it's not a question. I am eating, you are eating. If I want to ask a question, I invert the order and I say, are you eating? The thing is, in the present continuous, there's always auxiliary verb for positive, negative, and question form. But think about the order of the words. The order. How many eggs? Subject. Are, auxiliary. Lying, main verb. That is the normal order of a positive form. If I wanted to ask a question in the question form, I could say, are the eggs lying on the table, for example? And I would put the auxiliary verb first, are. But I'm not doing that. I'm putting the subject first. How many eggs? And then auxiliary, are. And then the main verb, lying on the table. It's the positive form. It's not the question form. Because how many eggs is the subject. The question words are the subject. So we use the normal positive form.
Right. Let's look at one final example comparing the question and the positive form. So which is question form, which is positive form. First sentence, whose book has she borrowed? Whose book has she borrowed? Question form or positive form? That's the question form because she is the subject.
What about this one? Whose book looks the best? I repeat, whose book looks the best? Is that the question form or the positive form? Whose book looks the best? Well, it's pretty obvious, I think. It's the positive form. You heard the word looks with an S, which is obviously third person singular in the present simple. Positive form. Because whose book is the subject. So we use the positive form. We don't add the auxiliary, do.
We hope that's helped you, Edgar. If you're still not clear, please send us another email and we'll give some more explanation and examples. If you want to see these sentences written, go to inglespodcast.com/195. Moving on, we have a voice message, Reza, from Bibiana from Toledo and Madrid. I think Bibiana used to live in Toledo, but now she's in Madrid. Let's listen to Bibiana's message.
Dear Reza and Craig, my name is Viviana Garcia and I'm from Toledo, but I have been living in Madrid for 5 years. Thank you very much for your podcasts. They are very useful and very funny to learn English for me. I have a question regarding the verbs take and get. I think they are two common verbs in English with a lot of meaning and many uses. I have problems to use these two verbs, and I would like to know if it's possible you help me with them. I mean, if you could give me tips and examples with them. Many thanks for helping. Kind regards, Viviana.
Well, thank you very much, Bibiana, for your message. Thank you for sending that to us. Take and get. Well, we have spoken about phrasal verbs with take back in episode 125, Bibiana. So if you go to inglespodcast.com/125, you can listen to that. But we'll concentrate more on expressions with take. Before we do that, Reza, do you have any comments on Bibiana's message?
Thanks very much for your message, Bibiana. And you're quite right that take and get are very common verbs with many collocations in English. I thought your pronunciation was very good. What did you think, Craig?
Yep, very clear, easy to understand, very well recorded and very clearly expressed. So well done.
Shall we have a look at take first? Shall we take a look?
Yes, let's take a look at take and words which collocate or go together with take. For example, you can take something for granted. We never take your voice messages for granted. We always appreciate them very much. To take for granted means dar por hecho, no valorar algo. Is there anything that you think you take for granted?
Me, probably by now, because I've been here quite a while, the lovely Mediterranean climate.
Yeah.
I take it for granted, but I shouldn't. I need to remind myself often about how awful the weather is in the British Isles. you go there for a week or two in winter and you'll soon see what bad weather is.
I think for me, when it rains here in Valencia, I go back to I think of England and I think of living in London, and I remember the rain and the cold. And although I feel very comfortable in rainy, cold weather, it reminds me not to take the beautiful sunny weather for granted. So I have to remember not only the weather, there's lots of things here in Spain that I do take for granted. So I do try very, very constantly not to take things for granted.
I suppose certain food I take for granted. I really enjoy my food, and Spain, and particularly the Valencian area, is a very good area when it comes to getting fresh ingredients for food. They've got everything you can imagine. It's cheap, it's good quality, it's plentiful. Things that cost a lot of money in my hometown in Belfast. Trying to get your hands on, there's an expression with get, trying to get your hands on fresh artichokes and things like that is not cheap in the UK.
Even things like olive oil, which is very common here. Olive oil is very expensive, and it's not easy to get your hands on olive oil in the UK.
Certain fish, there's a great supply in Valencia. In Britain, people don't seem so interested in fish, so it's harder to get and it's more expensive.
There's a practice that I like to do sometimes, and that's to sit down in the morning after my morning coffee, which I don't take for granted. I appreciate that every day, and write down one thing that I don't take for granted, one thing that I appreciate, one thing that I have. And if you write that down, it really makes you feel good. And it could be something small like, oh, this toast with olive oil tastes really good. I'm going to write that down. Or your general health, or someone you love. And it sounds a bit corny. What's corny?
Corny is un poco como cursi, pipi, something like that.
Sounds a bit corny to say that, but I think you really should appreciate what you have in life and not take it for granted.
Craig, what about to take advantage of something? For example, do students ever take advantage of you?
From time to time, not very often, but I have had students who take advantage. For example, one student a few years ago was doing a university degree. I think it was a master's degree. And they asked me one break time if I could correct their dissertation that they were doing.
In the break time?
Well, no, not. But they gave me like about 150 pages of their dissertation in English and asked me if I'd correct it for homework. I said, I'm sorry, I don't think I have the time to do that. No. But that doesn't happen often. Usually my students don't take advantage of me. Take advantage is aprovechar, explotar.
Craig, what about something that you really take a lot of pride in? Pride is the noun from proud, or orgulloso, so orgullo. Do you take pride in your work?
I take pride in this podcast. I'm very proud of the work we're doing with this podcast. Yes, I think I do take pride in my work. One thing I don't take pride in very much is my appearance. I need a haircut. I don't always wear very, very smart clothes. So maybe I need to take more pride in my appearance. What do you take pride in?
What do I take pride in? This podcast, a lot. It's probably the thing that I take most pride in right now in my life, I would say. What about that?
That's very nice to hear.
It's true.
Yep. Thank you for saying that.
Because I think we're doing a good job. I wouldn't take pride in it if I didn't think it was good.
Yeah, and because of the great feedback we get, I think we appreciate the fact that we're actually making a difference, which is something to take pride in. Take a joke is another common collocation with take. If you take a joke, then you are able to laugh at things, especially when it's connected to you. So if you can laugh at yourself, then you can take a joke. If I say, for example, Reza, you've had your haircut. When are they going to finish it? They haven't finished your haircut. If you laugh at that, then obviously you can take a joke. You can accept the fact that I'm laughing at you.
Craig, it's funny that you should say that. It's funny means that's a coincidence, because I said exactly that once to a student and they could not take the joke. I'll never forget it.
So did they actually understand it, or?
I think they kind of did, but they were very sensitive. I'll tell you the story. It was my first year teaching English in Valencia, so quite a few years ago. And I was teaching a class of teenagers. And a teenage student, a girl who was one of my favorite students. I had a soft spot for her. I really liked her a lot.
What does it mean to have a soft spot for something?
If you have a soft spot for someone or something, it means you have a very deep or a real fondness or enthusiasm for that person.
Cariño.
Or real affection.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked this girl. I thought she was very nice. She was good fun. And it was because of that I decided to tell a joke. I saw that she had her hair cut, and it was very nice. And she said, "Oh, I've had my hair cut. Do you like it?" And I said, "Yes, I've noticed. It's very nice, and it'll look so good when you have it finished." And her face just completely changed. She went white. The blood went out of her face. She looked horrified. And I said, "Oh, Amparo," she really was called Amparo. "Amparo, I'm only joking. Your hair is lovely. I know it's finished." She said, No. You said it looks like it's not finished." I said, yeah, but that's just a joke. She said, no, but you said it. I said, yeah, but it's a joke. Of course, I know your hair's finished. She said, no, you think it's horrible. Boo-hoo. And she started crying and she ran off out of the class. Yeah.
She was crying?
Yeah.
Oh.
And she ran out of the class.
What a shame.
And she didn't come back that day. I think she came back a few days later, but I felt terrible. She couldn't take the joke. She took offense at my joke. Mm-hmm. She thought I was genuinely criticizing her, but I wasn't. I was just being funny because I really liked her.
So that's another collocation with to take offense at something. If you take offense, then you're offended by something somebody says, in this case, Reza's joke. Mm-hmm. Some people take offense to particular jokes and some people don't.
I learned a very important lesson from that. Never, ever, ever make any joke ever under any circumstances about a teenage girl's appearance. Just don't do it. An important lesson.
I've learned that lesson too. Another collocation is to take a risk. R-I-S-K. Risk is riesgo. So when was the last time you took a risk, Reza?
Oh, that's a good question.
Mine was yesterday.
Oh, what did you do? What happened?
Well, I drove down to see my parents and things happened during the day and I had to drive back to Valencia late at night. I don't like driving late at night. And yesterday it was raining very heavily on the motorway. So I took a risk by driving back in the dark, in the rain. Mm-hmm. I don't like doing it. I don't feel very comfortable in some parts of the road. So yeah, it wasn't a big risk. It wasn't a huge risk. I wasn't climbing Mount Everest in my sandals, but I took a risk.
Yeah.
What about you?
Oh, when was the last big risk I took? Oh, I'm trying to remember.
You don't strike me as being a risk taker.
Exactly.
You don't like to take risks.
I do not take big risks. I have to admit that's true. So I can't even remember the last time I took a big risk. I really can't remember. What a boring life I lead, listeners. It's true.
Well, a very safe life.
Well, true, yeah. Craig, I don't think you've been taken to hospital recently, but do you know anybody who has?
Yeah, my dad was taken to hospital quite recently, a couple of weeks ago. So to take someone to hospital, obviously, is llevar. So
how's he doing now?
He's doing much better, thank you. Yeah, he's doing much better. And I want to thank everybody, not only the listeners to this podcast, but also on our Facebook page at facebook.com/mansioninglés, who have been wishing me well and asking about my dad, because I think I mentioned he was in hospital a few weeks ago. So thank you very much for your good wishes. He's doing much better. He was released from hospital yesterday and the ambulance took him home. So to take someone somewhere, you can take someone to hospital, you can take them home, you can take your children to school. So llevar is another use of take.
Who took you to school when you were young?
My mum.
So it's full circle now. You have to take your mum and dad everywhere. They used to take you to school. Now you take them to hospital and health appointments.
Oh, believe me, Reza, there are lots of things that my parents used to do with me. They used to take care of me. That's a phrasal verb with take. So they took care of me when I was young, and now I'm doing the same for them now that they're older. So yeah, life does go in full circle sometimes.
So your parents, like everybody's parents when they get older, they're not quite so healthy. It's not so easy for them to get around. Do you take pity on them?
Yeah, I do. I do take pity, not only on them, I take pity on many people who have difficulties in life, and especially because of age, that they can't do things that they did when they were younger. Do you take pity on your students?
Sometimes, yeah. When I'm trying to explain certain things like modal verbs, I take pity on them because my explanation is so bad and it's so complicated that I do take pity on them. I think I couldn't understand this guy.
Well, I'm sure that's not true, but I do take pity on students because not only with modal verbs, but things like phrasal verbs and English spelling and the pronunciation, it's very difficult. It's a very difficult language to learn and to master, to be in control of. So I do take pity on students who are trying to really dominate and control the English language.
Another thing you can take is pleasure. We take a lot of pleasure in doing this podcast. In other words, we feel pleasure, we take pleasure in doing this podcast. Craig, what other activities do you do in which you take pleasure?
Well, the things that I could speak about on this podcast, I take pleasure in enjoying a nice coffee. I take pleasure in sharing food and good times with friends. We say in English to break bread. Did I say that in Spanish? To break bread with friends? I don't think so.
Don't know how to say
The
that.
idea of breaking bread. Bread is obviously a really important part of your food, especially in the Western world. So if you break bread with people, it's kind of like you're sitting with them, you're at peace with them, you're enjoying their company. So yeah, it's really nice to break bread with friends and family. So I can say get pleasure or take pleasure from that. I think that's quite formal though, to take pleasure. I would probably say I enjoy it. Mm-hmm. It's another way of saying I enjoy doing it. I take pleasure in it.
Are the other things that Craig mentioned he takes pleasure in? We can't go into detail in them in the podcast. they happen in the privacy of his own room, and we'll leave that to your imagination.
And finally, our last collocation with take is to take advice. Obviously, you can give advice to someone. Remember that advice is uncountable, so you give or take some advice or a piece of advice, and you give and take advice. You give to someone or you take from someone.
You said give and take. That's a very typical collocation. You could say life's all about give and take, isn't it? Give and take means you got to do things for other people and they do things for you. That's life. It's give and take.
Compromise.
Yeah, particularly if you have a partner, a husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, there has to be give and take.
Yeah, my wife gives to me and I take from her.
There you go. Perfect.
Moving on to uses and expressions with get. Now, we have spoken about get back in episode 63, mainly about phrasal verbs like get on, get off, get by, get over. So to hear that episode, go to inglespodcast.com/63. But now we'll speak more about some expressions and collocations with get. Reza, do you sometimes feel that you're getting old?
Definitely, yes. These days, right now, because I had a cold recently and I'm still not quite myself, I'm taking time. There's an expression with take. I'm taking time to get over it, to recover. I feel I'm getting old. My bones are just not quite as flexible as they used to be. I'm a bit stiffer. I do feel I'm getting older. What about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do feel like the years are creeping up on me. When to creep is to move silently, so you don't notice the years creeping up on you. But this use of get to get old means becoming. So you can use get in the sense of becoming. If you get drunk, you become drunk. If you get old, you become old.
Get rich, become rich.
Yeah. And in a month or two, probably in March or April, here in Spain, the weather will get hotter. So Again, the use of become, it will become hotter in the spring. The weather will heat up. So the weather will get hotter in a couple of months. But it has got quite cold recently.
Craig, I've got a couple of sentences I'm going to say, and I wonder if you could repeat them, but with slightly different words for the listeners.
I'll try. Do they have get in them?
They do.
Let's get going.
Let's get going. Let's compare these two questions. The first question is, what did you get for Christmas? And the second one is, what did you get your mum for Christmas? Both have get, but different meanings. I'll repeat. What did you get for Christmas? And what did you get your mum for Christmas?
So what did you get for Christmas? What did you receive? So what did somebody give you? So this meaning of get is to receive something. Another use of get with receive would be, I get the newspaper every day, or I get this podcast from iTunes. The idea of receiving something. The second sentence, what did you get your mum for Christmas? What did I get my mum? This meaning is more to buy something. What did I buy my mum for Christmas? Well, I bought her a pair of slippers. So I can also say last week I got a new computer. I bought a new computer. Or I got a new pair of shoes. I bought a new pair of shoes. So far we've had three uses or three meanings of get. To get old, to become, to what did you get for your birthday or Christmas? You receive. And what did you get someone? What did you buy them?
Craig, as we can see looking out the window, it gets dark early in the winter, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
It gets dark, it becomes dark. And in the morning, it gets light. So get dark or get light for the weather or the time of day. You can also say it gets colder in the winter, it gets warmer in the summer. It's very common. Again, this meaning of get as change or become.
And also you could say now we're moving into spring here in Spain, so we can say that the days are getting longer. They are becoming longer as we move into spring and summer. So the days are getting longer.
Of course, sorry if I'm confusing our South American listeners when it's exactly the opposite, of course.
Yeah.
I take this the other way around because you're in the southern hemisphere.
Getting shorter over there, isn't it?
But you know what, Craig? Things can only get better.
Isn't that a song? Things can only get better. Another meaning of become.
Can only get better. But it's true. You should think that whenever you're depressed, when you're having a bad moment, think, well, things can only get better. They can't get any worse.
Speaking of things getting better or worse, you can get married. So
Can it get any better than that, Craig?
getting married? No. You can also get divorced. If you break up with your wife or partner or husband, then you get divorced. So there's another use of get there, which also means to become. You become married, you get married, and you become divorced, you get divorced. Or you could just use the verb to marry someone or to divorce someone. But it's very, very common, especially in spoken English, with the word get. When did you get married? Oh, I got married 3 years ago. Did you get that, Reza?
I got it. I got that, Craig. In other words, I understood it. I heard it and I understood it. I got it. That's very informal English. I understood. I get it. Or I understand. Or if you don't understand, you could say, I don't get it. Why do you want to do that? I don't get it. I don't understand it.
And it's interesting, you sounded like you had a little bit of an American accent when you said that. And it is a very common expression in American English, where I think, and this is my opinion now, in American English, I get it is more common than I understand it. Or I totally sympathize with you. I understand completely what you're saying, because I hear very, very often, especially with American English podcasts, that they say, yeah, I get that. I get that means I totally understand your point of view. I totally understand the message you're bringing us. Yeah, I get it. Very, very common.
And while we're on the topic of comparing American and British English, don't forget, listeners, of course, that get has a different past participle in British and American English. So to get, infinitive, past simple, got, but the past participle in British English is also got, but in American English it's gotten. For example, I heard that Sammy and John have gotten married. Sorry, I should do the accent. Let me try again.
I thought you did.
I heard that Sammy and John have gotten married. They've gotten married, American English. But I heard that Sam and John have got married in a British English accent.
So tell me, Reza, have you gotten drunk this year?
No, I haven't actually. Yeah.
Well, it's only February.
Here we are in February. It's true, I haven't, probably because I was very ill and I haven't had in fact, I must admit, I did have a drink earlier today and it was the first drink I've had in a long time.
Really?
Yeah. I certainly haven't got drunk in a while.
Me neither.
Yeah.
So again, American English gotten and British English got for the past participle. What do you understand, Reza, if I say to you, oh, get a life? Get a life, mate.
If you said that to me, I would need to think about changing what I do because I'm boring, because I need to widen my horizons. I need to get out more. Another expression with get out more, get a life, do interesting things. Don't be so boring.
So if somebody asked you the question, what do you most take pride in your life? And you said, well, the podcast I do with Craig, you might hear the response, oh, get a life. There's more exciting things you could do with your life. Come on, get a life, my friend.
Yeah. Although I would have to disagree, and say that making a podcast is extremely interesting. I get a thrill out of making a podcast.
Oh, get a life.
No, I think it's great. Don't you get a thrill?
Yeah, I do. I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah. A thrill is a feeling of excitement.
So get a life means, come on, you're not really living an exciting life. You need to get out more. You need to do things. You need to get out and meet people and socialize and party. You get out more and get a life.
Craig, what would you say to me if I asked to borrow £5,000 in cash right now?
I'd say get lost. Vete a la porra, would you say?
Yeah.
What is La Porra? Where is this a place where you should go?
I don't know.
Go?
I know it's not a good place.
It's not a good place, is it?
It's like El Carajo that we talked about before.
Yeah.
Do you remember? We wanted to know about El Carajo. Vete al Carajo. Not a good place.
I'm still looking for a road sign in the road that says El Carajo or La Porra. So, there it is. Now we can go there. And finally, our last expression is to get your teeth into something. Tus dientes. Get your teeth into something. So if I said to you, I've been working on a project and I really need to get my teeth into it because I can't finish it, what do you understand from that?
You need to really, really get involved in it and stop looking at it superficially, but really go into detail and do it properly.
Yeah, I am working on a new course, a listening audio course for La Mención del Inglés about technology. And I've started it. I started it last month in January, and I'm finding it difficult to get my teeth into it. I really need to sit down for a few hours every day and get my teeth into it. I can also say get stuck into it. Imagine you have a really delicious steak sandwich or a really delicious piece of meat and you get your teeth into it and you enjoy eating it. That's the idea of doing something con ganas, to really do something that you're totally immersed inside it and inside the project.
Well, Craig, we are getting close to episode 200. That's right, 200 episodes. That's a lot, eh? That's a lot. So we figured that for our 200th episode, you could ask us anything. Anything you like. Not about English, about something else. Don't ask us to solve the mystery of the universe. But, if it's a reasonable request, we might be able to get back to you. We might be able to give you an answer.
Yeah, so I think you need to get creative here and get thinking, two more uses of get, about what you could ask us that's not connected to English or grammar or vocabulary or anything like that. So we'd love to get a voice message from you so we can hear your voice and get to know you. Get to know, conocer, another one. So send your voice messages to speakpipe.com. That's SPEAKPIPE. If you have an Android phone, you can do that directly from our website, or go to speakpipe.com/Inglés podcast. If you have an iPhone or an iPad, you do need to download, descargar, a separate application. It's the SpeakPipe application and it's free. And with that, you can send us as many messages as you like. But remember, the maximum time is only 90 seconds. So think what you're going to say before you hit record and then maximum of 90 seconds to record your voice. If you prefer email, you can get to me by sending me an email to craig@inglespodcast.com.
Or you can get in touch with me at belfastreza@gmail.com.
And we'd like to say a huge thank you to people who are supporting us on Patreon, our wonderful patrons. Reza, let's start with Bruno, our gold sponsor.
Thank you to Bruno, our good sponsor. If you remember, he is the guy who organizes the walking tours of Copenhagen. If you want to find out about Bruno's tours, you can have a look at his website, www.copenhagenwalkingtour.com. And he does the tours both in English or Spanish. Also, he does favela, that's that Portuguese Brazilian word, which has got into English, favela walking tours in Rio de Janeiro, led by local guides. So don't worry, it's very safe. They know where they're going. They know the areas you have to avoid and the good areas. And it helps the community there to improve their daily needs because the tourism helps people make a living. So go to Bruno's websites to find out more about that information on the favela at favelawalkingtour.com.br. That's BR for Brazil.
And many, many thanks to our other wonderful sponsors on Patreon, who are Beatriz, Pedro, Maite, Palatin Perez, Rafa, Nestor Garcia Mañez at nestorgm.com. That's his astronomy podcast called Luces Extrañas. There's Sara Jarabo, thank you. Carlos Mamin, Juan Leiva Guerrera, Corey Finneran, whose podcast is at ivmv.com. That's a baseball podcast about the Chicago Cubs. Miren Full, José Luis Arguí, Agus, Mariel, Manuel, Rafael, Manuel, Juan Carlos, Pilar, Ganbate Blog, Ana Giovanna, Igor, Ignacio, Kieran, and our latest patrons who are Carlos Garcia, Pachi Ibanez, and Ana Ibarra. Thank you all very much.
And if you want more information about our Patreon program, which you can join for as little as $1 per month to get instant access to recent transcriptions that have been transcribed lovingly by Angelica Bello, have a look at www.patreon.com/EnglishPodcast, and maybe you'd like to sign up for as little as $1 a month. Thanks very much to Angelica Bello for doing the transcriptions.
And last but not least, that is something you say when you give a list, but the last thing on the list is equally as important as the first. So last but not least, a huge thank you to Patricia Alonso, who has been giving her time and talents and energy to transcribing episodes for you for free. And we now have on inglespodcast.com full transcriptions of episodes 1 to 17 and 131 to 142. Thank you, Patricia, for continuing to do that. Reza, what's next week?
Chatting with your friends in English is next week's episode.
Until then, it's goodbye from Reza.
And goodbye from Craig.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.